Hello, everybody. How's it going today? It's good to be here. My name is Mary Cronert, as many of you may know, and welcome to another Wednesday Pop-Up Art Studio live stream here on Facebook. It's just after 2 p.m. on Wednesday afternoon on this, in Oshawa anyways, kind of a gray, rainy day, damp, chilly, but not too cold. Kind of, one of those last autumn days that we might have before the winter comes. And you know what? There's no other place that I'd rather be than here with you making art. So thank you so much for joining me. Now, as always, I'll give a little spiel to welcome folks. Hi, hello, Alicia, how are you doing? And also to say hi to folks who might watch this once it's been archived, whether you're watching it on Facebook or on YouTube, once we upload it there in a few weeks. What is this? Well, this is just one version of our virtual art hives that we share with you during this weird and strange and uncertain time. And you know what? The feedback has been so amazing, we think we're going to keep this around for a little bit longer. So look forward to more of these live streams happening in the future, even when we do get together in person and can get together in person and make art, like we used to. But for now, we can hang out and connect and create with one another right here online. So if you're watching this live, please feel free to say hi. You can do that by saying hi in the comments, like Alicia just did. You can also, chat to one another in the comments. So you don't have to just talk to me. You can share things, resources, responses to one another as the community connects and grows, learning about one another, learning about what you're making. I always love hearing about what folks might be working on at home because we can't see what one another are working on in the same way we used to when we were in the studio. It's nice to have those little windows into one another's creative lives. So if you're working on something that you'd like to share or spotlight, please feel free to let us know. If you're having trouble with something and maybe you want to learn more about how you can get through that barrier or how you can combat the inner critic who might be being really hard on you, put it out there. Ask. It's always, when in doubt, ask. Right? That's what we can say about that. When in doubt, ask. If there's something you'd like to celebrate or honor or promote, you can also do that here too, the same way that we would have in the studio space. And if there's anything that you'd like support on, please feel free to let the community know as well. You're welcome to. Now, you may not feel like joining in the chat. So if that's you and all you feel like doing today is listening or watching, maybe while you're doing something else, maybe you don't feel inspired enough to make art. Maybe you're working your way out of a creative project and just need to take a break. Maybe you have to do something else like work or homework, or maybe you just need to do nothing while you listen and do some of that kind of self-care. That's totally all right as well. I won't know that you're watching. I only know when folks are watching if they say hi or put it in the chat. So if you're one of those folks who's just listening along, that's totally okay. We love having you here and we can feel that energy coming in. Just know that I won't necessarily be able to say hi to you. So this is a big old blanket hello. Hello and artsy glitter covered virtual hugs to everyone who's out there watching or listening and doing their thing. B, how you doing, B? And B saying hello to everyone. It's so good when we do get to see folks who are watching or listening, even if all you do is say hi. It's just a nice reminder that we're all still out there. We're doing our thing. We're finding ways to move forward and connect and stay in touch one way or another. It's difficult sometimes, especially as the winter approaches. I don't know if anyone else is feeling this, but I'm beginning to feel that the call of hibernation, just that kind of, I want a blanket nest. I want to wrap myself up in a little quilt or something. I don't have a quilt, but I'd like to wrap myself up in a quilt and just read a book, have a cup of tea, in those moments where you can just ignore the world for a little bit. But having an opportunity to connect always helps. So that's why we're here. That's why we're here. Now, just like the studio, we have our safe space policy as well. It still applies even though we're online. So it looks a little different though. What that means here is just we encourage you and invite you to be as supportive as you can of one another, encouraging, negotiate consent. And that includes being kind and supportive and consentful with yourself as well, right? And if you're having a hard time with that, we call that the inner critic. So if you're having a difficult day, hey, Shelley, with the inner critic, let us know. We might be able to talk to it, learn a little bit more about what it wants. Every once in a while, that inner critic has something constructive to say, even though they might not be saying it in the best way. But if it doesn't, we can unpack that, we can figure it out. But if there's nothing good there, as B has said in the past, we can delete it, we can crunch it up, we can make art about it and throw it out. We can do a lot of different things to figure out just how to quiet that inner critic, even if it's just for the time you're spending with us here making art. And other things as well, if anything happens online or in this virtual space that makes you feel uncomfortable, please feel free to let me know. Or, let one of the other community members in the chat know. If it's something that you want to work out, figure out, address in some way, you can always ask and we can work through it together. We can also message one another after the live stream. If you don't quite feel comfortable bringing it up in the moment, send us an email, send us a Facebook message, although emails get through to me a little faster. And let me know so that we can learn how to be more supportive of one another in this creative humaning that we all do. And it's not always easy. Sometimes it's a bit messy, and that's okay. When things are messy or uneasy or feeling topsy-turvy, that's usually when good change is happening, when some kind of growth is occurring. So never, never, ever worry about bringing something up, okay? And let's see here. And B, who's one of our thank you, Bridget B. Noonan. B just saying that B's here to help as well. B's one of our super awesome, amazing volunteers, but also one of our coordinators. You might have seen some of their amazing live streams that they've hosted in the past, and we hope that B will be back one day hosting more live streams for us too. B's familiar with that inner critic. I think we all are, and sometimes all it takes to help quiet that critic, or maybe even take the wind out of the sails of an awkward moment, or learn something about how we can be more supportive of one another, is just to make the observation and say, Mary, when you said that, it made me feel uncomfortable. Fill in the blank, whatever it might be. And then I can look at that action, that behavior, the thing that I said or the thing that I did, for example, and I can track it back and try something different and learn how that thing, in this case, in this context with you, may not be the best thing to do, right? That's all we can ever do. And sometimes talking about it is hard, but it always, always leads and generates something new and different and interesting. And I'm catching up a little bit here too. So B's saying, oh no, got a bit of body pain from the cold and damp, but once I get this coffee in me, I think I'll feel a bit better. Haha, I hear you there. I've got a giant mug of tea today. I've cut myself off the coffee. I'm going to be honest with you. I've had a little bit too much today. So I've got a nice mint tea to help ease me and warm me up into this afternoon. And it's so great. The community, the resources we have even within this chat, they're so fantastic. So please feel free to reach out. And you know what? Alicia, who's here in this chat as well, Liz, they're going to be working with us for the next little while, helping us to develop some stuff behind the scenes for the living room, including the super awesome, amazing Glossary of Terms. And I meant to print it out as a work in progress to show you folks here in the live stream, but I'll have to save that for another day. But Liz is helping us develop this amazing resource that we can have online when our new website launches, but also print out and share with folks in the community that goes through all the different kinds of terms and words and the jargon we might hear in the Art Hive movement, but also in social justice and anti-oppression work. And, sometimes we hear things, but we might feel a little shy to ask, what does that mean? And Liz is helping us just kind of clearly get that stuff out there on paper. There, Liz is saying hi. Liz says hello, looking forward to connecting and supporting you all. See, it's great, right? And one of the reasons why I wanted to bring this up in today's live stream, even though I will be making art, I will get to it, I know. Because you can help us figure out some of these things, right? Especially when it comes to terms that we've made up as a community. So if you know the living room, you know some of the things that I'm talking about, like inner critic, for example, trying to come up with a definition of that in relation to the living room and our art hive is really interesting. It might mean different things to different people. So if you have an idea about what the inner critic is, how we might define it, you know what? Put it in the chat, and then Lisa can help and like distill it and jot it down, take notes, and we can come out with a definition that kind of represents all of that feedback. And I might be throwing out some other terms during the chat about, you know, that we want and hope for definitions on as well. And you might have some to suggest. Folks who've been like part of the virtual art hive streams, or maybe back in the old studio days, there might have been things that we said or I said, and you just kind of thought, what the heck does that mean, right? Like inner critic is one, but then there's things like, what was one I was thinking of the other day? Oh, yeah. Sometimes we refer to art hives as liminal spaces. Like, what the heck does that mean? Or radical hospitality, right? Then there are other things that are fun, that are just a part of the environment. I think of Margaret Franklin and that wonderful term she gave us of crapalanche. For when things, the creative things you're doing, or how you store art supplies just becomes so much of a mess that, you know, when you go to take that little piece of felt off the shelf, everything else just tumbles after it. And I think a crapalanche, although in other circumstances might mean other things, in art hive world, it means something specific, and it's fun, right? So if you have terms that you'd like to put out there that we can help define together, please do. Oh, interesting. So we're already getting responses. Oh, thanks, folks. This is so great. So B's on this. This is great. B says that's perfect. Shelley says, the inner critic to me is something that helps me decide what I need to do, even if sometimes I don't feel like I need it. Interesting. So that's, you know, that element of the critic that can be constructive. It's almost like, you know what, Shelley, that's really, really interesting. I might even call that like, that to me, that's like critic almost in like an inner appreciator or an inner guide kind of way, right? The kind of inner instinct that we have. I wonder if that's something to define too, like creative impulse or intuition, you know, the thing that guides us, that nudges us towards that place where we might not want to go, but when we do, we discover really interesting creative possibilities. I love that. And that's like a really nice voice of that inner critic to have. So, you know, the inner critic can have both. It can have something helpful to say, or maybe it's helpful at one point in your life, but then the next day it's like, not so helpful. It's interesting to know it's never just one thing or the other. Thanks for kicking that off, Shelley. That's amazing. Oh, and B loves the crapalanche term. Yeah, thanks. Huge shout out to Margaret Franklin for that one. It's a pretty awesome term. All right, so let's feel free to continue that conversation and let Lisa know if there's any other terms you'd like to define. And maybe again, like I said, I'll be throwing some things out there or reflecting on it as I create. But for now, yeah, let's switch gears. Let's switch our little window here and start working on the project I have in mind for today. So, and feel free, folks, let me know what that inner critic is. Oh, lovely. Hey, Sandra. Sandra's saying, hey, honey, I can only stay for a while. I have a person coming to see me shortly. Oh, Sandra, thanks for saying hi. And you know what? Ooh, excellent. I'm loving this. Thank you. Sandra, later on in the day, if you like, after the live stream, if you have a definition or a description of something very specific, like that you'd like to go into the glossary, let us know. You can come back after it's been archived later on, or you can send us an email. Either way, it works, but I hope you have a wonderful afternoon. And Don King, guitar man Donald J. King, saying inner critic, ugh, mine is a complete jerk. He wouldn't let me finish anything if he had his way. Yeah, my inner critic, more often than not, unfortunately, is similar to yours, Don. It kind of just, and I think I've told folks this before, I don't have just one. I've got a choir of them. And on any given day, maybe one chooses to, sing. And another day, it might be all of them all at once, speaking all at the same time, right? For me, it's the same thing. It's the voice that kind of just gets in the way and makes me feel just crappy enough that I sometimes choose not to start the project I'm working on, or I'm so hard on myself that I can't enjoy the process. It's really interesting, isn't it? Yeah. Dawn, thank you so much for that. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And B Sambata Sandra. And yeah, you can watch the rest later, just like B said, Sandra, because we love having you folks here. We love having you here, Sandra. Yeah, that inner critic, right? It's like interesting how one moment it might have something positive, like even when it's being grumpy, just revisiting, kind of bridging the worlds of like what Dawn was talking about and then what Shelley was talking about. Every once in a while, the critic, like, I don't know if the critic was always there because it wanted to get in our way and cause us to have sucky days. I think sometimes, maybe once upon a time, the critic was there because we needed that kick in the pants, or maybe the critic was trying to do something protective or positive, but considering maybe what was happening in our lives or our creative process at that time. But it just hasn't learned that that's not what we need anymore. So those voices that maybe one time were helpful in this moment in our lives, just, what is that? Grind our gears, I was going to say. I don't think I've ever used that phrase in my life. But yeah, grind our gears. I think that's a fair assessment, because sometimes, and you know that feeling of creativity when it's just like, it just gets so clunky and stuck. Oh, I love it. So be saying a horde of critics. Yep, that's me. Acquire a horde for B. I get that, says B. Sometimes they're very much a chorus of perfectionism, and that doesn't help the creative process. B says, I think they're protective sometimes, but they have the wrong end of the stick, so to speak. Absolutely. Absolutely. And then there's like how we communicate with like that. How do we, and that's of course a conversation we used to have all the time in the studio space. How do you let that inner critic know, you know what, this isn't helpful for me right now. Please back off. Get quiet so that I can do my thing. And Alyssa, too, you let us know if you have questions as you're listening along here and hearing these definitions. If you have questions or need clarification on anything that folks are sharing, please feel free to let us know. Is there another term out there that folks know from the studio that you'd like to be included in the glossary? Anything that you remember? Sometimes it might have been things that you heard me say a whole bunch. Like, you know what, here's another one. Safe space. A safe space. We use that and we include it in all our spiels. But for me, again, just saying that phrase, safe space, doesn't necessarily explain or help people understand what we mean when we talk about a safe space, right? So if folks have their ideas about that, I know for me, it's about accountability as much as anything, being willing to work things out, being willing to reflect on our own behaviors and how we move through the world, how we engage with people. And Sandra just said, I was just thinking of that, right? Like safety can mean so many different things to so many different people. For some folks, it was almost as if like safety means I can do whatever I want here. I can be purely me in all my glory, which is always a lovely thing. But what if your glory in that moment is something that makes someone else feel, you know, really, really uncomfortable? Or what if that glory is hurtful and you're maybe not intending to hurt people, but it does, right? So it's something about accountability, about being willing to learn, willing to grow, willing to have a conversation about something, even if the conversation is a bit awkward, you know? I don't know. Safe space. One of those interesting terms. All right. I was working on this. I was playing with the idea of using paper just to talk about art for a little bit. I was thinking about making a like more envelope art today, and you know, just sort of based, you know, sort of what I was talking about off the top. You know, it's chilly, it's damp here. I'm feeling this need to kind of close in and surround myself with things that comfort me, not necessarily It's almost like in a loving way. I don't know if anyone else is feeling that out there, but this desire to strengthen my love, fuel up my love batteries. I don't know if that's a term, but just sort of fuel up on that. And self-love, not in a kind of congratulatory way although it can be, or in a, I don't know, like an Instagram influencer way, but seriously, just like I need to remind myself that it's okay to feel what I feel. It's okay to process things, to take time, to step back. It's okay to question. It's okay to doubt. It's okay to have wonderful conversations like this so we can figure things out. So I needed, one of the things when I asked myself about that, what I needed to do creatively today, it was all about softness, little softness in my life. So instead of paper envelope art, I'm going to do some fabric envelope art. And I'm going to figure it out along the way. Have no idea what I'm doing. Oh, lovely bee saying on the topic of safe space. For me, safe space means the safety to be myself while also being aware of my impact. Yes, be. Yeah. And the safety to be myself, knowing that you can be. You can choose. You have the safe enough to choose to reveal, to share, to be fully authentic, but also being aware of the impact that might have on the folks around you. And I think it's not necessarily there's something interesting there, isn't there? There's something else that's there. Because it's not so much about, okay, well, I'm going to choose not to be myself. I'm going for someone else's comfort, to accommodate them. Because I think a lot of us do that. We've done that our whole lives, haven't we? Right? So unlearning those behaviors so that you can find a way to be ourselves, to check in, to recognize the moments where we can draw out different versions of ourselves. I'm not sure. There's something else interesting there. Yeah. Because it has something to do with impact, doesn't it? But it's also, oh, Sandra, nice. Sandra says, being mindful. Maybe that's, yes, being mindful of, because I'm remembering times where we had conversations in the space. Sometimes, you might choose not to have certain conversations because they might be triggering or activating to other folks who are sharing space with you. And being mindful helps helps soften the edges of that. So you can maybe choose what language you use or negotiate when to have that conversation, because it might be a very important conversation, but that's an example of mindfulness. It doesn't mean I can't. It means I choose. And on the flip side of that, sometimes you have to mindfully have the conversations that will stir up potentially things that are uncomfortable in other folks, so you can create more accountability and safety and inform other folks about how their behaviors might be impacting you. So mindful is a really interesting, that's great, Sandra. Thank you. And oh yeah, Dawn's saying self-aware. Yeah. And when we can be, how lucky in those moments where we can be self-aware, right? Yeah. A kind of, it's not like, I think it's an interesting thing. We can't expect everyone, well, I can't expect myself to be self-aware 100% of the time and on top of it, because I have good days and I have bad days. But I think just that permission and the encouragement to be aware of self, because that could also, you know what, Dawn, that's fantastic, because that can also lead to recognizing within ourselves, oh, today I am having a bad day. So what do I need to not like take care of myself, but also like recognize that because of the space that I'm in, that there may be certain conversations I might want to stay away from, or certain activities that I don't want to, engage in for my own sort of safety and kind of self-care, but also knowing that just the place I'm in today, it won't be a good fit for whatever it is that's happening there. So it's an interesting piece. It's a because the mindfulness and the accountability is also about keeping ourselves safe as much as it might be being aware of helping others feel safe. I think that's Really, really great, Dawn. Thank you. And B saying fabric envelope. Oh, I might have to try one of those. I have plenty of fabric scraps in the big old bag of quilting materials. And that's it too. I have so many scraps. I'm just trying to figure out on the notion of art how best to seal this, because part of me wants to just sew it, like do a nice whip stitch around this. So I have this envelope and the structure all sound there, but then I also kind of want to do some fabric, some needle felting on it to add some texture to it. And I'm wondering if I should do that before I put it together. Oh, the impatient artist that I am. Decisions. Be gentle, Mary. Gentle, gentle. Oh, love that, Ellen. And hello, Ellen. Ellen, that's fantastic. So, Ellen saying, I'm often heard safer spaces used to acknowledge that no space may be completely safe for everyone 100% of the time. But for me, I think it's a covenant with everyone in the space to make them feel seen and respected. And then saying, hi, Mary. Hi, Ellen. Oh, that's brilliant. Oh, Alicia, I hope you saw that. I hope you heard that. That's fantastic. So maybe it's time to change our language from safe space to safer space. We're working towards a safer space here. Because here's the other thing as well. Oh, I'm having a really chatty day, folks. Mary, get making. Oh, see? That's my inner critic there coming in. It's like being quite bossy today. Quite bossy. Yeah, I'm going to do a little bit of felting first. A tiny bit. Just some really abstract stuff. So let me just remember. So this will be the front of the envelope, and that'll be the front. That'll be the top. I'm just going to do a little pencil arrow there so I remember what might be the top. Safer spaces. Yeah. Because as we move into like the mobile art hive, we're shooting our recognition video for Trillium, and we're getting ready to do all of that fabulous stuff. It changes, though, how we engage with people, right? We don't have a doorway for people to walk through. It's a different way of engaging, hopefully for all the same intentions, the same kind of results, but it'll happen differently. So looking at what we mean by place and space, we don't have 4 walls with the mobile art hive. So what does space look like for us? What does place look like for us? And I think, Ellen, keeping that in mind, because safer space kind of encapsulates everything else we were talking about, wasn't it? It includes mindfulness. It includes self-awareness. It includes, like Bea was talking about, that lovely sense of like authenticity, knowing a safer space should be a space and could be a space when it's, flowing and moving in the right direction, that we feel and we know we can be ourselves, right? And knowing that there still might be things we need to, if someone, again, that curiosity, that lovely expectation that we talk about of, here's another term for you, Alicia. Here's another Art Hive term. Creative engagement. Creative social engagement. Because that's a term we use a lot, I think. Like the expectation to engage creatively. What does that mean? Because I think as long as we are, sharing space, we create space together when we share space. So maybe that's a definition. Maybe that's something to go in the glossary as well. Like, what do we mean when we say space? I mean, we could go down the rabbit hole with this, and every word we use, like, what does the mean? We could go down the rabbit hole and take apart every single word to recognize, the context. But I think we're just, focusing on the big strokes here. But space might be one of those terms. Like, how do we define space, especially for the mobile art hive when we don't have walls? So when we have a studio, like a fixed studio space, that's one thing. And when we're out in the community, that's another. And this is, again, it's so funny that it's around this time of year I always move to softer things. And at the same time doing something like needle felting, which is a little, has its own edge to it. I'm reminded last year this week, I think I did needle felting as well, because this is Transgender Week of Awareness. And in the lead up to an evening, the Trans Night of Remembrance, when there were events in the community, and I think Oshawa is not having an in-person event this year. But that was one of the events we always looked forward to participating in and being there. And so I think that's another thing that's on my mind, and this return to softness and, having these conversations about safer spaces and what that looks for everyone. And sometimes we won't know what it looks like because we can't possibly understand where everyone is at in their journeys and their lives. And that having that mindfulness and that self-awareness and the recognition that when we share space, whether it's outdoor space or indoor space, or, at a coffee shop, or a board game cafe. Ah, yeah, B saying, yeah, shout out to my trans pals. Yeah, exactly, right? You don't always know someone's journey just by looking at them. You can't read a book just by read a book by its cover? Is that the phrase? What the heck is that phrase? Guess a book? Judge a book? Judge a book. Why would we want to judge? That's a weird phrase. I'm going to remove that one. There's all of that. Sometimes the safer space policy, see, Ellen, thank you, I'm going to practice using it now, is about anticipating the needs we haven't yet discovered and the needs we may not be aware of. And we will make mistakes and we will stumble and we will, there'll be all sorts of wonderful and weird things that happen along the way. But it's one way we can, anticipate and be prepared to learn and grow. I really like that. I like that a lot. Oh, here we go. And again, just a reminder, this is maybe only the 4th or 5th time I've ever tried to needle felt. I don't know what I'm doing, folks. Don't judge a book by its cover. There's B. Yeah, there's a lot of judgment that happens anyway. So I suppose the saying still works. Still fits. And until we can find ways to, seek clarification, learn, grow, do what we need to do, but in ways that are respectful of others. There's a lot of learning to do. There will always be learning to do, and that's okay. But definitely something, I think, safer spaces and working towards having a safer space and being a safer space. That's a part of something too, isn't it? Like, again, when we revisit these conversations about inner critic, one of the things we're talking about is, modeling behavior. That's one result of it that sounds kind of like who cares, but it's helpful. But being able to kind of embody that for ourselves, to be kind, start with that kindness and awareness and compassion towards ourselves, having safer spaces within ourselves for ourselves. Because I think those things, when we have that kind of understanding of like that, it's one thing to talk about all these things, right? And then it's another thing to live these things, to practice these things. And I think we tend to be much nicer to other people sometimes than we are to ourselves, much more respectful to other people than we are ourselves. So if we can start with that respect for ourselves, learning about what that's like, what we need, what we appreciate, what helps, I think it builds bridges towards the rest of this, humanity, the people we share the earth space with. In Art Hive language, dream big, start small. So perhaps starting small is starting with ourselves. Let's do this. I never know what's... Ooh, cool. Ah, see, needle felting is such a surprise. Sometimes you think, what am I doing? This isn't doing anything. And then you're reminded, it is. It's working. Just kind of smush things around a little bit. So safer spaces for ourselves, for other folks. I love it. Hey, Barb. Welcome. Barb says, good afternoon, everyone. Love this conversation. When I help people with meditation, I teach people to create space along with me. That's beautiful, to create space. It's fabulous, Barb says. It's a fabulous exercise, a great art therapy exercise as well. We start with a blank piece of paper and fill the space with safe, calming, positive items and phrases. Sometimes it is, that, isn't it? It seems like when you read it and you're like, oh, that's something I could do, but doing it is something else, right? It takes practice. It takes a kind of willingness to become comfortable with those processes in our own lives and to understand that we can create space, the space, like even that little space around ourselves, the little bubble we inhabit in any given moment in time. And recognizing the various boundaries and paths and walls and bridges and windows that are within that we use to let people in and let people out and just observe over, right? Observe the world through or over or around. I think for the Mobile Art Hive, that'll be a really important one. Recognizing, well, when we talk about space, what do we mean? And B saying, it's funny, I've had a needle felting kit for ages that I've been too afraid or self-conscious to try in case I messed it up. You're modeling, I see what you did there, B. You're modeling a sense of creative exploration for me, Mary. Once I dig it out of the stuff I've moved, could give it a go. If I can give it a go, anyone can give it a go. It's strangely soothing. And I still don't know what I'm doing. But I kind of like that. My other attempts of needle felting, I think I've tried to create something specific. And I'm just going abstract today. And I think, why didn't I start abstract to begin with? It's one of the things that's my jam. Get comfortable with the medium before you try to, adventure out there and replicate things. So, but you live, you learn. So today, I'm finally getting around to that point. A year after I picked up a needle felting needle for the very first time. I'm getting to it. See? It all comes around. So whenever you find that kit B, I'm sure it'll be perfect timing for you. And as we're moving things into the Mobile Art Hive and setting up, I'm finding myself in that similar space of I thought we had this, or I know we have such and such. Where is it? All my clevering label aside, I still went way off the labeling path and got real obscure with some of those bins, real random pieces of tape with labels that I look at and I say, I don't know what that means. And then it's under a giant stack of other bins and anyways, it will get done. And I'll find that when I find the stuff, I find the stuff. I'm going to try not just try to be gentle, trying to love myself. And my invitation for you, for everyone, my magic wand dream would that we could all have that. Know that we can be capable of that, because there are lots of times when we don't love ourselves so much. Peppermint tea. Ooh, Ellen's saying, I've also read stuff. Wow, Ellen! I've also read stuff about brave spaces. As an empowering reframing thing, like a commitment to show up, stay, and see each other even when it's hard or awkward, when it feels safe, of course, made me think. You got me thinking now, too. Wow. And that sort of links for me into what Barb was talking about, too, because that's kind of what happens in that moment when we're taking that time to connect and be with ourselves too. We're actually for ourselves creating a brave space. And if we can do that with ourselves before the rest of the world, then that safer space becomes a whole lot easier. Oh, Ellen, all of you, thank you for being here today. I needed this. I needed to hear and learn about these things. What else do we need to know about? Come on, folks, feel free to share. Only if you want to, not the boss of you. Braver spaces. Yeah. Because that's, again, culturally, at least right now, here, Oshawa, me, sitting in this space, that's one of the places we're at, is like, how do we have these conversations? And how do we encourage one another, let one another know that it's okay to have certain conversations, that, that, as I was mentioning before, like that discomfort that we can have sometimes, it won't always be here. So, and the only way sometimes to move through that discomfort is by having the conversation that is uncomfortable in the first place. So how do we do that for one another? How do we do it for ourselves? How can we show up? Braver spaces. That's a great word to include in the glossary, along with safer space and braver space. Love it. Excellent. B saying, we've been talking about brave space in one art therapy class. I still don't know what it means, but I like exploring it. And that's it too. Maybe all of these terms, to like a certain extent or another, are living terms, right? Maybe they grow and they evolve, because I think what we need for safety and what we consider brave changes and evolves as we kind of reach new benchmarks within ourselves and within communities or groups, right? So it's not surprising to me that it would, that it's one of those things that takes a while to figure out, because it changes depending on how safe we feel, depending on, what we learn, how we grow, whether we're having a good day or a bad day, which environment or space we're in. Being brave, that bravery in one space might look a little different. It's contextual. And if you're in another one, love, 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 love all of this. Thank you, folks. And I think braver space is something that that's something that I need to work on within myself, moving back out into community. Because I think, like within, again, the safety of four walls and a community that you're familiar with, the regulars, one might say, of an environment or a group or, neighborhood even, with that predictability, with the ability to anticipate certain things or certain responses, it does, that helps one feel a little safer. But moving out as we are into community and maybe working with the communities we've never worked with before, maybe encountering, different behaviors that after almost 2 years of spending most of my time indoors in this studio, there are new conversations that we might have to have out there in the world that we didn't have to have or didn't have to have as often before. And that's also maybe a good thing, or not a bad thing, right? That honesty with ourselves, courage to recognize within ourselves when something isn't right for us, or we're having a response that needs to be voiced or acknowledged so that it can eventually be voiced. Like all of this, I think, can play into that, what it means to have or create a braver space for ourselves and for those we care about, and community by extension, right? Interesting. What are some other Art Hive specific ones? I'm wondering if there's, and if you're listening or watching and maybe you live in a different place and maybe you haven't, like you're part of an Art Hive that's different from ours. Maybe there are spaces that are like words or phrases that are unique to your Art Hive too. Please feel free to throw them in here. But I remember crap-a-lench was one of my favorite terms to learn. see. Some people really love the sound of needle felting. Other people not so much. So let me know if you're one of those folks and you need me to take a break from it. I can do something else. See, it's so funny when one word, the word space, and look how many ways we can define it. I love that. It's almost like space can be its own little heading in the glossary, and then under that we can have many other subheadings. And exciting. Love, love, love. All right. Let's take a moment to fold this up and see what it's looking like right now. Ooh, nice. So Barb says, this is my definition for brave space. Be real. Oh, so brave. Oh, I see what you've done there. B-R-A-V-E. Be real and value everyone. That's a lovely little thing. And Ellen says, I was about to say, I'm loving the low-key ASMR vibes I'm getting from the felting sound. Okay, good to know. Good to know. And B saying, yeah, love the sound of needle felting. And the abstract design you're creating is pretty cool. Aw, thank you. Let's see, which way was I going to do this again? I'm glad I decided to needle felt it before stitching it, or like sort of closing the envelope up. So far that's what that side looks like. So I can definitely experiment a little bit more. And that's what that side is. Yeah, it's nice. I'm liking the kind of marbling effect. So I'm just going to keep on keeping on with this. Let's see what I can do here. And this is a case of, I think, oh, here's another phrase, folks. How often have you heard people say, trust the process? So that's an interesting one. When you hear that phrase, and maybe we're getting into glossaries of phrases now, so I'm not sure if that applies. However, it's one of those things that you might hear a lot in Art Hive land. Trusting the process. And you hear it in lots of other spaces as well, right? So I think it can have a specific definition in other areas, in other kind of genres. Like I'm thinking in therapeutic genres, trust the process might mean something very specific versus Art Hive, where it definitely ties in a little to trusting your creative voice. And it again ties into safety, the safety of knowing that you can take creative risks. So maybe that is the phrase that should be in the glossary regarding sort of Art Hive things. Creative risks. What is a creative risk? How do we define that? And maybe, we may not need to define all the terms in all the world, but it's interesting. Oh, hey, Laura. Laura showing up as the living room says, hi, happy to be here and have a tea and a pecan pie after a good day. Ooh, but a bad last 10 minutes at work. I'm so sorry to hear that, Laura. Want to talk about it? Oh, it's weird when that happens, when you're kind of rolling along and then suddenly the last 10 minutes of work. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, that sucks. I hope you're feeling okay. I'm hoping that pecan pies and that tea is helping you just get back to that place, that good place that you want to be. Reclaiming your safer space, your braver space, your loving space. And on the note of, what it means taking a creative risk, B says, I'm taking a creative risk today by drawing an owl without using a reference picture. A little laugh at the end there. There's been a lot of chat out there in the various, live streams and Zooms we've been doing recently about that, about how there's this kind of weird one. this, on one hand, this kind of the anxiety around just going for it and drawing without a reference picture or guide, which is such a cool thing to do. And it's a little bit terrifying. I think it's terrifying for everybody, but and myself included. Maybe I can should only speak from my own experience. Terrifying. But I've always looked at anything that's happened, and maybe it's wonky, and maybe it's lopsided, and maybe it doesn't resemble the thing I wanted to create at all, but it's always interesting in the end. And I think I've always learned something from that process too. But it is taking a creative risk. It's kind of trusting. So what is creative risk taking is trusting that the creative impulse, it's a really interesting one to define. Laura's saying, feeling better listening to your talking and felting. Well, I'm glad that's helping a little bit, Laura. I'm glad. Yeah, that's an interesting one to define, creative risk-taking. And B says, I never sketch stuff without using references. It mostly looks like a pop can right now. But it's fun, so I'm enjoying it. Isn't that where the discoveries happen too? Like maybe it is. Maybe it's a pop can owl. Maybe you've just created a new kind of owl. Maybe it's an owl that wants to be a pop can, or a pop can that wants to be an owl. Maybe it's a whole new creation, a whole new thing. It's like because sometimes when I'm looking at drawings that my siblings' kids have out there, and I think, that's extraordinary. How did you do that? And when I look at a drawing made by like a 7-year-old, for example, I don't know if I could do that. I don't know if I could create that. Even if I wanted to replicate it, I don't think I could, because I think there's something in there about just going with that flow and allowing the creativity to happen without judgment, without self-censorship along the way, as much as possible. And maybe that's what creative risk-taking is, like just allowing yourself the freedom to not judge, to create even if it's not taking you where you want it to go, to not, feel like you have to censor or edit for, anyone else's purposes anyways. I don't know. Maybe it's something to do with that. Just being free for a little while from all of that. And Laura's saying, just looking for better in me. Interesting. Saying, just looking for better in me. I feel like I'm letting things fall, even though I'm trying hard. Love that you knew it was me. Oh, I'm sorry if I outed you. I know some of our coordinators, if you want to come on and be the living room, you know what? I should respect that. So that's my bad. I should check in before naming. But I like that, how you said that. Just looking for better in me. It's hard sometimes, especially if we've been through a hard afternoon or had a hard moment or I had one of those moments on the weekend running into someone, a family, an unmasked family at a place, a store I love to go, and they were saying some very disturbing things and disrupting a lot of people and making a lot of people feel very bad and very unsafe. And it was a very responsive, reactive moment for me. And I don't always like when I get like that. I think that was a hard afternoon. That was a hard afternoon for me. And so I think when I came back from that, I was doing a little bit of that, of looking for the better in me and trying to let go of them. But yeah, Laura says, I'm okay with being me. I'm glad you are, because, who am I? But I think you're pretty extraordinary as you are. But I think sometimes it's hard to feel that for ourselves. It's hard to hold on to that, especially when we're put under pressure, put under that tension of whatever it might be that shakes us. Yeah. But finding that place, that space, space returning, where we can be, again, returning to that safer space idea, be ourselves and love that, whatever that might be about ourselves. And know that we're okay, we're enough just as we are. That's a lovely, lovely thing. Lovely, lovely. Oh, excellent. And Barb's saying, creative risk to me is not just coloring outside the lines. Ooh, it's not having lines at all. So that's a really cool thing. So that would be something about that permission again to just allow that impulse, that creative impulse to emerge, to, oh, I like that. Like drawing without a reference picture. There's, not everything has to look or be a certain way, and maybe that's, Knowing that we don't have to look to anyone else. That's maybe part of that. When I think about coloring, like coloring outside the lines versus no lines at all and just coloring, it's that sense of trusting our own instincts and not waiting for someone else to give us permission to do what we want to do. But just to do it because we can, to do it because we want to trust that whatever we have to say creatively is valid and worth saying and deserves to be out there in the world, whether it's a song, a poem, a dance. When's the last time people danced? Has anyone danced in a while? I had a good old living room dance the other day. It was fantastic, but I don't do it nearly enough. There's a new artist that I love. Their name is Little Sims, and they have a new album out, and it's just fantastic, and it's so danceable in so many ways. And I just had to dance, because sometimes you gotta. Oh, lovely B, following up on what Laura was saying. Laura B saying, I can only be myself because everyone else is taken. So that, if I was to say it with the proper, again, inner critic intonation, I can only be myself because everyone else is taken. Now I'm really self-conscious. There's my inner critic, folks. One of them. Yeah, there's been a lot of those moments for me this week, too. A lot of inner critic. Why did you just say? How did that come out of your mouth? What? Who are you? And then there's another somewhat constructive. We're reverting back to, Shelley's thought of sometimes the inner critic can be constructive. Another inner critic that pipes up in those moments and says, oh, just chill out. Be kind. And they have a conversation, and eventually I settle down. I think I need to work on these little wings a little bit more too. Let's see here. What have I got here? There might be folks who needle felt out there who are watching what I do and thinking, oh my goodness, she's inventing some new techniques. There's something liberating about just teaching yourself how to do something by doing it. And in art, that's one of the safest places to do that, Let's see. Oh, excellent. B saying on the question of when was the last time you danced, B dances every day B says, I did the shiver in the cold dance last night while waiting to cross the street. I did the coffee dance this morning waiting for the kettle to boil. The silver dance, the shiver dance is very arm involved and bouncy. Love it. Oh, I can see you doing those dances. I can see that. Yeah, all sorts of dances when it comes to those things. The waiting in line at the grocery store dance. They gotta use the restroom dance. There are lots of dances out there. Oh, 303. All right, let's see what I can do. I'd really love to have this envelope put together a little bit. So for folks who are tuning in just now, hey, how you doing? What are we talking about today? We're talking about... We are talking about terms and words and what they mean. We're also talking about self-love and creating comfort for ourselves, along with things like creating space for ourselves. I'm making a fabric envelope today because I needed something soft. I needed some softness in my life. I wanted to create something that I could hug. And I didn't quite feel like making a stuffy. I might do that another day. But I also like the metaphor of creating an envelope. And there are lots of really cool kind of fabric envelope tutorials and things out there. So if you're interested in doing that, there are so many cool things you can do. I just did it this way. I deconstructed a paper envelope and then made myself a pattern. And this, I think, is maybe a quilting, like a batting or something. It's some kind of felt that I don't think is meant to be the actual product, but hey, I'm doing it. B saying, yep, on that note of the Canadian cold, in a Canadian winter, one must learn to dance between the snowflakes, pals. Oh, the poetry. B, there is some poetry happening with you today. Oh, many days, that is true, many days. What do we have here? I wish there was more of the blue. I don't know if it's showing up on camera quite, but there's a lovely kind of mauvey blue. So maybe what I'll do is I'll use something like this thread, to do a little stitch to bring it out. Should I do that right now? Let's see. Let me get stuck in on that. Which one should I use? And then I'll move in to actually some pink, blues, and grays. Yeah. So I'm going to set this aside for now, and who knows, maybe I'll come back and be saying, oh, that's a good one, B. Or the fabric envelope art hold the hard stuff. Oh, and that's, yeah, we did an event last week where we did an event that was, and it's a common art therapy term too. We did an event at Trent that was called Let the Art Hold the Hard Stuff, and I want to put in some stars, stitch in some stars as well. We had a fantastic event with students from Trent, Durham, and just a table set up where they could come and sit and make art and kind of explore that idea of just letting the stuff out that they wanted to get rid of in a visual form, in an abstract form, or symbolic form. And they were fabulous. There was just this lovely, they embraced it and ran with it. It was a quiet day, but a really nice one. And it's always good to be reminded that that's something any one of us can do. We don't have to wait, to do it with, an art therapist or a host or whatever. You can do it yourself. And a lot of artists, I think, that's what sketchbooks can do. That's what, maybe this needle's too big for this. It'll make too big. It'll just be a little too punctury. Bear with me, folks, while I choose another needle, something that's a little softer. Yeah, maybe this one. Boop, boop. letting the art hold the hard stuff. Well, the stuff we just don't understand. And that can be a whole other process of creative risk-taking too, right? Trusting, knowing that we can do that, that it's a lovely, that we're allowed. Just, yeah. Oh no, that's too big as well, is it? Oh, it seals up. Okay, I'm just doing it. Just gonna do it, folks. Now, I could use a hoop to help stabilize this, but I'm just gonna go for it. Just gonna go for it. Do a little bit of a running stitch here. Just add a little more pattern. Nice visible stitching. See where it takes me. Always interesting. But yes, was I in the middle of welcoming new folks who are watching? Hi. Hi out there. And hello to everyone else who might be watching once this is archived. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for being here. Thanks for listening or watching or doing whatever it is you're doing while here. Oh, look at that. Haha. That's what happens when I rush my stitches. But maybe that's a good thing. Maybe I need to use a new, slightly smaller needle, a little sharper, and then I can do some sashiko style stitches and just get a bunch of them at once. So yeah, the conversations we're having about terms, Art Hive terms, if there's anything that you'd like to see defined or explored, or if you have an idea of what something means that you'd like to see reflected in the glossary that Alicia is putting together for us, please let us know. And you can also email us as well. So there might be folks out there, as we say, who are just watching and listening who aren't quite, you may not want to join the chat. That's okay. So if you have things you'd like to be included, reach out, let us know, send an email. And that's info@livingroomcommunityartstudio.org. Come. There we go. So let's see. Some nice, that's nice. I like the way that looks. I like the contrast of the soft, fuzzy, fluffy marble effect versus this kind of the running stitch that is a little more graphic. I like that a lot. Yeah, the fabric envelope thing might be something I turn to during this season. I'm enjoying this process. I'm enjoying the tactile quality of it. There's something practical about it too, which kind of ticks that box for me around this time of year of wanting structure, but some, I think it's, again, that idea of softness combined with structure, but still with the ability to improvise and go off the grid a little bit, to just listen, take those creative risks, as we were saying. Know that it doesn't have to look like anything else that's already out there, but if it does, that's fine too. Let's see, here we go. Structure and softness and just kindness and warmth and making space for that love, that self-love. An art hug. And maybe that's something to do with the fabric envelope. Maybe that's what this is. Maybe it's an art hug for myself or for someone else. Maybe these will be gifts. Oh, Barb, yes. Barb says, do you make fabric stamps with the scraps for these? Absolutely. That is totally on the radar. And fabric postcards or letters to go inside. Why not? Where's that thread gone? There we go. Boop, boop. Why not? And this is something that I could see the hen family doing, actually. It's something I could see Nicole doing. Nicole's probably already done it, actually. Hello, Simone. How you doing? So Simone, if you're just joining us, along with anyone else, I've been making a fabric envelope, but we're also talking about art hive terminology, words or phrases that you might hear in an art hive or a creative space that you don't necessarily hear anywhere else, or that might have a very specific meaning within the art hive. Because one of our fabulous Alicia here, who's helping us out on the administration side, thanks to some Trillium funding actually, which is super cool, creating a glossary of terms for us. And this will also accompany, it'll be separate from, but it'll also tie into our anti-discrimination policy, all of that stuff that's maybe not necessarily fun to think of creating, but I think is really important to have. And these will all be living documents that can continue and change and grow and evolve with us as an organization. But we're looking for, community feedback about how we define certain things. So we've talked about creative spaces, what safer space means, the idea of space generally, what that means. Safer space, braver space, accountable space, all those things. We've talked about creative risk-taking. Like there's something that's really interesting that would be good to define with the community, right? And how, what does that mean? Talked about the inner critic. What other things should we explore? Should we define or try to define, knowing that the definitions might evolve and grow and change? And I'm just going to try and whip up this fabric envelope so I have, because I'm excited to see it put together. So I think I feel confident that I can continue stitching it once it's sewn together. So maybe I'll just finish off this thread and then I'll put it all together. Whenever I get sewing here, I get quiet. But that doesn't mean that you can't get loud wherever you are. Ooh, Simone with excellent terms. Okay, thank you. So Simone says embodied learning, vulnerability. Oh, and congrats on the funding. Thank you. And Simone's just checking in and let us know how they're doing. I am well. Interesting you mentioned creative risk-taking. Oops. I was thinking today about how to support those in art's creative spaces when we do art that brings up intense emotions. Oh, yeah. It's because sometimes you don't expect that art will engender those things, that it'll bring up really intense things. And I think, as in my life as an art therapist, I know there's been times when I've talked to clients about that, especially in the beginning when we're, beginning to work on things, and depending on who they are, if they've never really had a lot of arts experience or art making and sharing experience, they kind of are like, yeah, whatever. Until the day where it kind of surprises you, where either you sort of are confronted with the wealth of information and emotion and experience that a creative piece can hold and convey at the same time, and you're just astounded by that, or creating something that just opens up that doorway in your heart to, any of the emotions, any of the feelings that are, again, wonderful information that we can use to inform where we go next. But if you're not expecting it, it could be really scary. And it's interesting. Yep. And exactly, Simone. May not realize, but sometimes asking people to do art can be a lot for people, which is one of the reasons why I honor that experience in the studio, especially anyone who comes in to make art. That's a really extraordinary thing. Even, if they're doing something that maybe it's easy to sort of brush off, like a coloring page, for example, or like a kit, like whatever they're creating, that in itself, just the choice to sit down, to be present. This ties into the braver space idea again. Like just that alone, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to be present, I'm going to consider engaging and expressing myself. That in itself is what an honor, what a privilege for those of us like holding space and, well, there's another term, holding space. It's an absolute gift. And I think sometimes when, maybe if you're not connected, maybe if you've only ever worked just from a professional artist perspective, and you yourself are very disciplined and have this creative approach and these expectations of workshops or experiences or sort of like teaching experiences where I teach this skill to you and you will replicate what I do, we don't necessarily consider the other side of that, which is the enormous gift and how people are putting themselves in a vulnerable position just through being there and participating in that way, right? There's so many things we could talk about. I will never, ever, I am eternally grateful for anyone who shares space and shares art with us. And that it goes for these virtual art hives as well. Anyone and everyone who contributes or witnesses or recognizes this within themselves and the desire to be a part of this in some way. It's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. And Liz, hello, saying, sorry I've been so quiet for everyone. I have been having a little stress with school lately, but I'm loving the terms and concepts and will make sure to include these in our glossary. And, I'm sorry you're having that stress with school. I don't think you're alone. For any other students who might be out there, and I know you're out there, I hope you're doing okay. I hope you're hanging in and getting through. For any recent students, this is also a really interesting year. If you graduated recently, or if you're considering going back to school, all students of life. I know this is a time that can be really stressful for a lot of reasons. There's new beginnings, there's endings approaching, there's deadlines looming, there's expectations we have of ourselves and others sometimes that we can't necessarily manage or control in the way we might like. So please be kind to yourself. Thank you for being here. And use this time, the time that we have left here, the time afterwards as well, to do what you need to do to help get yourself into a place that will enable you to thrive, whatever thrive might look like to you. Because that can be a lot of different things as well. Sometimes thriving is just recognizing that I can go grab a cookie or a coffee. And I need to do that right now, so I will do that right now. That's a moment of resiliency in my books. And Barb saying, our family will definitely try these. Oh, lovely. When I worked in daycare, I always set up a simple art activity during the parent pickup time. That's a brilliant idea, Barb. And Barb says, parents were encouraged to come to the table to help decompress from their busy days before they took their children home. Brilliant. Brilliant. I love that idea. And it's, sometimes like at the studio, those folks who or any art hive, because I think this is not uncommon. It is always an interesting challenge to engage parents in the creative process. And we know that parents are creative. Just because you have kids, it doesn't mean you're not creative. But a lot of parents somehow think that, and I don't know when this happens, a lot of grown-ups I think it can happen to as well, where we convince ourselves that art isn't for us. That those kind of activities, forgive my saliva here as I try and thread this needle for the very last stitch. I always push it. I push that last stitch. Where we begin to think that art isn't for us anymore. And of course, if you have, and if you have kids or if you have little creative people, humans in your life, what an extraordinary thing. Speaking of like honor and privilege of creating with others, like what a gift it is to create alongside a child. And I've seen at the studio, actually, Dawn, if Dawn is still out there listening, I've seen like beautiful moments, you know, with people in the community with not necessarily their own children, but, you know, children of friends, and that wonderful thing that begins to happen when we give ourselves time to decompress through creative, like in creative ways. That connection that occurs is gorgeous. So students, if you're out there, if you need a little time to decompress, I can't, I'm going to recommend art. Whatever kind of art you want to do. And because this thread won't stitch, I'm just going to pull it out this side. I'll deal with it later. I'm probably not alone in that. There's got to be other folks. Other folks who've had that experience with the thread. Okay, I want to stitch this envelope up, folks. I want to see if I can finish it in the last little while. What color should I use to do that? Blue. And then I'll use these as highlight threads. When something flows, go with the flow. And what an honor it is to create with people, to share space, virtual or otherwise, with people. And be saying, oh, I had the best time last week creating with my small housemate who is 6. We made great pictures for the front window. He is super fun to create with. If it is who I think you're talking about, yeah. I mean, the best teachers, children can be the best teachers sometimes. Teachers in so many ways. And just that lovely reminder about what matters, right? All right, how is this going to look? Boop, 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 boop. Oh, interesting. So I'm beginning to see it come together. Let's bring this one in a little bit more. And maybe to start, I'll just... Yes. All right, okay. So to start, I'm going to just tack this now that I have that shape right there. Let's give that a little stitch just to help keep it closed. I have some fabric glue somewhere, and I'm sure you could seal something like this up, stitch it up, or stitch it. Fix it with a little bit of fabric glue, and that might be a faster way to do it. But then you have to wait for it to dry before you do anything else, and, you know, I'm already impatient. All right. I'm falling in love with this little creation. I'm not sure what it looks like or if it looks like that much. Let's see. Oh, B's saying we made reindeer and Santas, and I took the reins on making a red felt hat for the little ghosts we kept up in the windows from Halloween, and his designs for the little gift boxes for our ghosts' hands were awesome. Oh my goodness. That sounds amazing. That sounds amazing. Let's do a little close-up of what's going on here. So there it is so far. Oh, I'm hoping to have a little boop, boop. Definitely going to add a little more color into that. Yeah, a little more color into that later on, but for now, let's get it stitched up. And Simone's saying, how can we make arts-based activities more accessible? Let people know they can interpret a prompt however they wish. So that's what you're talking about with accessibility. Yeah, sort of breaking down those barriers for individuals who may think that they aren't artists, or art making is not for them. It's for someone else. It's for kids. It's for artists. It's for students, you know, whatever it might be. While also, Simone says, providing the emotional support, making ourselves available to others that may be necessary based on what we ask people to make / reflect on. Art Hive, food for thought. This is a fantastic question, Ellen. Simone. Ellen saying, looking so great. I really needed this soft, creative, brave chat. And grateful. Oh, thanks. I'm grateful you're here too, Ellen. Simone, just revisiting that question, such a good one. And I think it's an important question to revisit. because it's not something that is like a one sort of template, one formula kind of thing, because it depends obviously like on, again, context is everything. The communities we work with, the individuals on any given day, the combination of people who might be there, the different kind of where we're at, if we're playing a role where we're holding space or facilitating something or witnessing something for someone else, there's a lot there. The only one thing I can think of that's helped me, and feel free to chime in, folks, here in the few minutes we have left, and this might be a good conversation to carry over maybe into next week's live stream, is being transparent and in the sense of checking in with ourselves and sharing that experience, sharing our own experiences so that others can feel a little more free to either know that they can bring up stuff if they want, know that it's okay to be uncomfortable, know that it's okay to feel weird or not know where to start. Gently challenging and like investigating those times, being curious about when artists, regardless of age or ability, might be encountering barriers, like looking for those little things. Like in the studio space, it was easier in some extent because we had physical cues, sometimes verbal cues, sometimes just sounds coming from people where they're like, ah, or, that kind of contracting, which is another weird, that's the therapeutic term, I suppose. But, when people come into the space, being able to let them know, just right off the bat, transparency about not everyone's going to feel it. Not everyone's going to want it. You might learn different things about yourself as an artist here that, you might discover you're an artist. You might discover this kind of space isn't the space that helps you feel like an artist. There's so many things, but I think it starts a little bit with curiosity. I think it starts with a willingness to be a part of the community ourselves, to be a part of that process. So it's not just examining it or figuring it out for someone else. We're including ourselves in that process. And as long as we're including ourselves in that process, I think we have a really strong foundation to stand and move from and figure things out as we go along on any given day, right? I think whenever when things haven't worked in the art hive space for me, or even like in other sort of more therapeutically oriented spaces, or even actually as an artist, like I'm thinking of in theater and rehearsal or for film or when I'm working on stuff, it's usually because I've kind of disconnected myself somehow from the process and I'm thinking about others rather than starting with my own lived experience in this environment, in this moment with others. But it's, like sometimes you got to start somewhere. So starting with ourselves, that's the only one thing I can think of right now that sort of for any environment, any space can work. Because if we remove ourselves from the equation entirely, then we're relying on others to teach us. I think in a sense that it isn't always fair to do that. Like, oh, this is such a good conversation. Look at me go. Ooh. But I think just permission, granting ourselves the permission to be there, to be present, to move from that experience, to not be afraid to look silly, to let those mistakes shine brightly and be celebrated and honored. The willingness to, be available and vulnerable ourselves and compassionate and caring, whatever it might be on any given day. I don't know if that's even beginning to address that, I don't know. And especially when it comes to things that are more directive and structured with prompts and such. Yeah, I think it's a constant and ever-evolving process of negotiation and checking in and exploring things together. Yeah, I don't know. Interesting. Let's see. And B saying, your fabric envelope is giving me deep oceanic vibes, Mary, like dark swirls of inky ocean. Yeah, I was going back and forth between ocean and sky. Yeah, right? Just like throw it, oh, yes, yes, yes. With an edge of squid or octopus feel. Those deep ocean critters, cool and calm. Maybe this star or these stars that I put on will turn into ocean creatures. I think maybe I can play with that. Ah, yes, yes, yes. And Simone says, I love that, Mary, being vulnerable even when you're still processing something, it can really inspire others. I think, yeah, I think just the willingness to explore and be a part of that process ourselves, even if we're in a position of so called authority or leadership, right? We're all just a part of the same process. And people, I think, generally we all kind of want to look for answers and look to someone else to tell us what to do. And I think that's part of that process. That's part of the things that can feel so vulnerable in a situation like that, where someone is, with all the best intentions, inviting us to just create, express yourself, speak your truth through art. That can be freaking terrifying. And knowing where to begin, even if it's something that, like a directive that feels fairly simple or straightforward, it's still terrifying. So I think just that mindful piece, revisiting that Sandra with the comment we had earlier in the conversation about mindfulness, being a part of safer spaces. Thank you, Ellen. And braver spaces. Thank you, Ellen and B. We're a part of every space we create, regardless of where or why that space is created. We're still a part of it. Yeah. And anything is results too, right? Oh, this is a good conversation, Ellen. Ellen, and why am I mixing up Ellen and Simone right now? Maybe those are two people that I haven't had an opportunity to meet in person yet that I desperately want to connect with in some way. Yeah. Results are everything, in the sense that everything is a result. And sometimes in groups, we have these expectations of what people should or could create, and we trust their potential and their capacity, their awesomeness. And we know that, like, for us, our journey meant something, and if we only embraced it, and we would have, and if we could have, and blah, 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 blah. But even the smallest mark, the smallest expression is something, right? Oh, Simone's saying my middle name is Ellen. Well, there you go. Interesting. So maybe it's all connected. Like every response, everything that someone expresses or creates, even if it's not what we expect, is a huge milestone. And the beginning of, or part of a journey that is so beautiful, right? So even that, just part of what you said earlier, Simone, like finding ways to honor the heck out of that in ourselves as much as everyone else too, right? And I know I'm going over time, folks. Yeah, I'm going over just a little bit. I know I have to take Alice for a walk, but I'm really enjoying this. And Laura says, I remember the soul collage. Oh, that's right. It was very intimidating, but I got through it and it was good. And that, Laura, was I think you're talking about like the official soul collage workshop that happened with her name. Why is it escaping me? Ruth? Is it Ruth? Oh, that's going to bug me. But someone who was trained as a soul collage facilitator. And that's like, there are steps involved and there are things that you are asked to remember and do in a very specific way. And that for me is also intimidating whenever there's anything like, if there's a sense that there's a wrong way to do it. I'll be honest, folks, I'll probably bail. Which might be why I love doing a lot of abstract stuff. But it's really hard. I have to really dig into that bravery piece, that sort of let me be present. How can I be present? What do I need to be present just enough so I can have this remarkable experience? And Liz is saying, what is soul collage, if y'all don't mind sharing that with me? Excellent. Laura, how would you describe soul collage? And there might be other folks who are familiar with it. I do kind of an unofficial, trademarked version of it that I call soul cards. But this might be for you. Yeah, I think if you love collage, if you've ever done collage, And if you like the idea of creating something that's almost like a practical resource, as much as it is an artful resource, a practical resource that you can do in day-to-day life and use as a tool in your own creative growth, almost like it's like making your own personalized tarot deck. Is that right, Laura? But it's not necessarily occultish or anyway. It's a way of tuning into your own creative intention, your own personal intentions, your own creating symbols and a guide for yourself, like a resource deck of cards for yourself with collage. But soul collage, technically speaking, has a lot of rules, and it's a lot of different ways of doing it, and even down to the kind of materials you use, like mat board and just the different categories and houses that might, like houses, communities, like sections of your deck. It's very, very cool, but a lot of rules. So for me, that's one of the things that would intimidate me about that process. Yeah. I think, is it Selah Frost who created that approach? Maybe, yeah. It's a very, very cool thing. And I can totally, yeah, we can send some resources. Oh, well, Laura, bye. Laura's just saying I need to get M. Take care. Thanks all. And I am going over time. So if anyone needs to leave, please do. And maybe this is you know what, maybe this is a good place to wrap up because I feel like I could be here much later than I should with Alice needing a walk. But I will, you know what, Lisa, I'll send you some resources for Soul Collage because it's really cool. It's really lovely. Oh, interesting. So again, just wrapping up that thought before Laura goes, Laura says, the thing that got me about the Soul Collage was talking about my work. So it wasn't the making or how you make it, something that might intimidate me, but for you, it was the talking, the revealing of things. Yeah. And that's a difficult place too, especially in anything that resembles a group work, is how do we create a space safer for, in the way that allows folks, enables people to share what they want to share. I would always, in what we do at the Art Hive, if people don't want to share, they never have to share. You can talk about your work, but if you do not want to talk about your work, that's totally okay. I respect that because your work is your voice, and your voice is you. It's your gold. I'm not going to ask you to give me your gold if you don't want to, if you need that gold for yourself, or if you don't trust me enough to share that with me, right? Our stories are sometimes the only things we have in life. And we tell stories through art, right? And Simone's saying, thank you for the discussion. Always appreciate being here with everyone. And I appreciate being here with you too, folks. Let me just see one more time and close up what this looks like. So getting there. I think I'm excited, going to add some of that color in. Yeah. Oh, it's been lovely. It's been lovely, lovely fun. Boop. Now I'm just playing. And maybe that's all I've been doing, but that's okay. Oh, it's been great hanging out with you. And I'm feeling a lot of feels that I wasn't feeling before that I really love to feel right now. And I'm going to hold on to those and wrap them up and take them with me in my little envelope here for the rest of the day. Always a pleasure chatting, and what great discussions. I think these are discussions we can continue having. If you're out there and you have some Art Hive language that you'd like to have included in the Glossary of Terms that Alicia is creating, send it our way, letting us know what your definition of that is. Because I'm imagining we're going to find some common ground between how everyone understands and interprets things that will make these terms really powerful and useful for people instead of just having a plain old dictionary explanation. Your lived experience can really help us make a resource that's delicious and useful. So please feel free to reach out and let us know. And I guess, yeah, as we head forward and as the winter comes, and there's going to be lots of little housekeeping that we're going to be doing, informing you about what's coming up with the Mobile Art Hive project, but also with studio stuff in general in the lead up to the holidays. What kind of things would you like to see happen, right? How can we celebrate and honor this time that we have with one another? If you've got any ideas for that, let us know as well. put it here in the comments, or if you really want me to see it, send me an email at info@livingroomcommunityartstudio.org. But we can continue this conversation another day. Folks, it's been lovely. Thank you so much for your art, your heart, all of your thoughts and questions and clarifications. It's lovely. And so glad to be here with everyone today. And Simone saying thank you for the discussion. And yeah, I feel exactly the same way. So thank you. And I've been signing off with this phrase for a long, long time, and it's changing meaning over time because we're going to keep both. But it still holds until we can connect and create with one another again in person, which will be soon. I really do look forward to creating and connecting with you right here online. Always. Because you're awesome. Thanks, everyone. And have a fantastic day, evening, wherever you might be, whatever it is, morning. Enjoy it and enjoy yourself. Bye, folks.